Welcome. So this week we're going to learn Parshas Sisa. So the Parshas starts with Machzas HaShekel. Everybody had to give a Machzas HaShekel, and this was a truma, a special truma that went for the Adanim of the Mishkan. So the Pasuk says that the reason you have to give Machzas HaShekel, V'lo yeh bahem negev b'fkoi doisam, that when you count the people, then if you just count people, there's going to be a negev. People, there'll be a magefa if you just count people. So you have to give a machzas shekel, and then there won't be a magefa. So Rashi says, why will there be a negev? She'aminyan shel b'yayin hara, v'adever ba'aleim. When you count people, so there's a 9 hara, you're counting people. So many people, so there's 9 hara. And we have 9 hara, then you have dever, you have an epidemic, and people can die. David counted the people, and there was a dever. So the Rechaim talks about that episode that happened by David. So David told Yoav he should count the people. And why didn't David, why did he tell them to count the people? So the Gemara says that there was a certain lashon that David used, and the Rebbeinu Shalom was not happy with it. He called me a mesis. He wasn't happy with the lashon, so he says that he's going to make him do something that even school children know. All school children, when they learn the Chumash, they know that you're not supposed to count people. If you count people, it could be a magefa. So how could David forget such a thing? So that was a special haloma min Hashemayim. Hashem made that he should forget this, and therefore he told Yoav he should count the people. But the Rechaim says, but how about Yoav? How did Yoav allow himself to do this? So you're going to tell me, okay, the Rebbeinu Shalom made a haloma on David and also on Yoav.
But David insisted on it. Yoav, I think, did try to talk him out of it.
Yeah, he did. But
he did count. Yeah.
He did it. So how could he do it? So he says, okay, so maybe there was something on Yoav also. So how about the Sanhedrin? Well, how could they allow it? And even without Sanhedrin, how about all the people that were being counted? All the people should have been up in arms. They should have said, "What are you doing? You're counting us. There's going to be a dever. How could such a thing happen?" So the Rechaim says also, you have 2 other times in Sefer Shmuel that people were counted. Shaul counted people twice. One time he counted them vayifkedem bebezek. He counted them with bezek's shards of pottery or stones. According to one pshat, it means something else, but it means, according to Rashi, the first pshat is that it means shards. And another time it says vayifkedem betloyim. Everybody brought a lamb, and he counted the lamb, so he did it. So he says, why didn't he do Machzas HaShekel? Why did he do this? The Pasuk says he should do Machzas HaShekel. So Rechaim says there's a difference. If it's l'tzairach or shloi l'tzairach. If it's needed, if the census, the count is needed, then you could use anything. You could use shards, or you could use lambs. If it's not needed, then you have to use the Machzas HaShekel. It says by Shaul, the first time that he used the shards, he was facing a war with Nachash HaMoini. So he had to count his people. He had to know, what kind of forces does he have? How many soldiers does he have? So that was L'tzairach. L'tzairach he could use Bezek. The second time is when he went to fight with Amalek. Again, he's going to a war. He needed to know how many people he had. So that was also L'tzairach. L'tzairach he could use other things. Here, but David, he says, was not L'tzairach. Because, I imagine David had a reason why he wanted to know how many people he had, but there was not a pressing need. Like if you're on the eve of battle, and that's a real tzorach. Then you could use other things. So therefore, you needed machzah shekel. You should have done it with a machzah shekel. So now, what's the difference between the two? What's the difference in tzorach and not tzorach? So if when using other things, let's say bezek or tloyim, you're doing the count indirectly. You're not doing it with a shinoi. It's not counting them directly. You're counting them indirectly. So l'tzayrach you can do that, but when you're doing it shaloi l'tzayrach, where there's no tzayrach, then it's not enough to use a shinoi or bezek. Then you need machzah shekel. So why, if it's shaloi l'tzayrach, so how does the machzah shekel help? You're saying to count it indirectly is not enough. You have to use the machzah shekel. What's the mild machzah shekel? So you could say that the machzah shekel, since you're giving hegdish, using the koich of hegdish would be a protection. You have over here, you're counting, so it's the ein hara, so that creates danger. So if as a result of your counting, you're going to give money to hegdish, so that's a shmira against the ein hara. But I want to suggest something else, and I want to show that this doesn't quite work, because the pasuk says "Ha'asher lo yarbe v'adal lo yamet." Everybody has to give exactly a machzah shekel. Now, all the trumas we find that rich people gave more, poor people gave less. Everybody gave what they could afford. Why over here did you have to have machzah shekel? So the pashta answer to this is that if everybody would give whatever they want, then you would have no census. This guy's giving, 20 shkolim. This guy's giving so therefore you couldn't have variations because you would have no count. The count would be meaningless. But then the question is, okay, so you can't do this. But why couldn't you let that the usher should give a big matbeya and the oni would give a small matbeya? The usher will give a silver dollar and the oni will give a penny. But lamaisa, you could end up with a certain number of coins, so you will have a count. So why couldn't you do that? So if the purpose of the machzah shekel was to have a shmira, because you're ending up with money for hegdish, then you would have a shmira. So why don't you do this? Why is there din that the pasuk says the mitzvah that everybody should give exactly a machzah shekel? Why can't the usher will give a big shekel and a big coin, and the oni will give a small coin? Why don't you do that? So I want to suggest over here the pshat's like this: when it's shloi l'tzayrach, then it's not enough to do the count indirectly with a shinoi. When you're counting by using other things, and that's indirect, and that is not enough b'makom in a place where there is no tzayrach. What do you have to do when there's no tzayrach? When you're counting with shards, let's say, you really are counting the people. What are you doing? You're counting the people, but instead of counting their noses, you count the lambs that they brought. You count the shards that they brought. But you're counting the people. You're just counting them with a difference. With a shinu, you're counting them. That is not enough when there's no tzayrach. When there's a tzayrach, you could do that. You're counting the people, but you're counting them a little bit with a shinoi. When there's no tzayrach, you have to do something else. You have to make a totally different count. And the knowledge that you're going to get of how many people there are is just something that you're going to know, by the way. You're not counting the people. You do something else. So if everybody gives a machzah shekel, so your count is not a census. Your count is you're figuring out how much money does Hegdish have. Hegdish is doing an internal account. It's got a lot of money and is counting. So you want to know How much do we have? Hegdish wants to know how much they have. So they come up with a number. Now, Hegdish, the count is not the counting people. We're making a cheshbon for Hegdish. Once you make the cheshbon for Hegdish, then we could figure out how many people there are. Because everybody gave a machzah shekel, so we could figure out, you make a little math, and you figure out how many people there are. But if everybody would give a coin, and some people give a big coin, some people give a small coin, the count of those coins is meaningless to Hegdish. What is the accountant going to write down? The Gizber, what's he going to write down the book? Today we collected 100,000 coins. What does that mean? It doesn't have any value to Hegdish. What is 100,000 coins? You have to know how much it is. So if you would do that, then it would just be another way of counting indirectly. You're counting with shards, you're counting with lambs, you're counting with tokens, you're counting with coins. It doesn't matter. It's an indirect count. Loyal tzorech, you cannot do an indirect count. So what do? Everybody gives a machzah shekel, and then Hegdish figures out 100,000 machzah shekel means we made 50,000 shkolim. So Hegdish writes into the cheshbon, we earned today 50,000 shkolim. 50,000 shkolim, Hegdish made a cheshbon. Now you want all the senses, look up the books of Hegdish, see how much money they made, divide it in half, and you know how many people you have. 50,000 shkolim means you have 100,000 people. Okay, so that's okay. That means you didn't count the people at all. Not that you count them indirectly, you didn't count them. So with shleila tzairach, use machzah shekel, then you're not counting them. Yeah. So this week also we have the Parshas of the eigel. It's interesting how Chazal made that the sheni of the Sisa is extremely long because of the eigel, and the kohen shouldn't have to be. That's the reason why. Because when the kohen gets the first aliyah, the eigel doesn't come to him. The kohen only comes afterwards. I don't know why it comes by sheni. Okay. Anyway, so they said like this: Kum aseilon eigel. So you have to understand the eigel is just a very mysterious thing. You're just standing here by Har Sinai, and you had the Gili Shechina, and you got the Torah, and then Moshe is late, so now you want to go have Avodah Zarah, you want to have different gods. It's really, this is the question that puzzles everyone. But he said like this: Kum aseilonu elehim asher echol faneinu. Kizeo ish Moshe ish asher helonu meretz Mitzrayim. So he says that to make us Elohim, a different God, who will go before us, because Moshe took us out of Mitzrayim, we don't know what happened then. So Rashi says like this: Asher yechol faneinu, Elohus harbe ivulahem. They didn't ask for one God; they wanted many gods. So this comes from a Gemara Sanhedrin, Tafsamach Gimel. The Gemara says this, that they wanted many gods. So why did they want many gods? I mean, Moshe's not here, they wanted God. So 1, 2, 3, I mean, why do they need, they wanted a cheshek for many gods. So the Mashah in Sanhedrin explains what they were asking for, and he brings down the Rambam that we spoke about in Parshas Noach. The Rambam, beginning of Hilchos Avodah Zarah, that says what the origin was of Avodah Zarah. That everyone believed in the Rabban Shloim, but they believed in them tzoyim. That the Rabban Shloim has certain intermediaries through which he runs the world, and they felt that in order to worship the Rabban Shloim, the cover Rabban Shloim is by worshiping the intermediaries. So they wanted intermediaries. Avodah Zarah should not worship intermediaries, but they wanted to worship intermediaries. They felt the people at that time felt that would be effective. Over here also, this is what they were asking for. They had Moshe Rabbeinu was their leader, and he was he was their intermediary with the Rabban Shloim, but he's not here. So they wanted some kind of these gods. He wanted them to be. They want them to be intermediaries with the Rebbeinu Shalom. So you see over here. Okay, that's what they wanted. So it explains it a little bit why what they did. They weren't really completely rejecting the Rebbeinu Shalom. They felt if we don't have Moshe, we need other intermediaries, and it's not going to be Aaron or Kalev, or it's going to. They wanted some kind of semi-divine or a god. They wanted gods. So, what do they want? Why do they want these gods? So the pasuk says, "Asher helonu me'eretz Mitzrayim." He brought us out from Eretz Mitzrayim. Why are you mentioning Asher helonu me'eretz Mitzrayim? So Rashi says like this. He took us out. Moshe Rabbeinu took us out of Mitzrayim. They're not referring to Moshe's feet that he was able to extract them from the shibud of Mitzrayim. No. Shalonu me'eretz Mitzrayim, v'yomer lanu derech hashana leba. He was our guide. We were going. We had to go. We're going in the desert, and do we go on this road or on that road? Moshe Rabbeinu was the guide. He was the Meir Derech. He showed them which way to go. So now Moshe's gone. Now we need gods who are going to be our guides. That's what Rashi says. The reason why they needed gods was because you're traveling in the desert, you don't know where to go. Moshe Rabbeinu knew where to go. Now, if Moshe Rabbeinu is not here, they don't know where to go. So they wanted gods that told them how to go. So the reason why they wanted many gods was because when you're in the middle of the desert, there are many directions you could go. You could go, there's like numerous directions you could go. So Moshe Rabbeinu, because of his high level and because he was connected to Rebbeinu Shalom, he had this very, very high, so he knew everything. He knew which way to go. So he told us how to go. But now that we don't have Moshe, so then we have so many options of how to go. So they didn't think that you could have that you could have one God who's going to know all the ways to go. They didn't think that. So they thought, so we have a God, and the God picks this road, and he goes down the road, and he comes to the end of the road, and he sees where it goes. So he'll come back and he'll tell us, this is not a good road to go, or this is a good road to go. So you need to check out all the routes. So in order to check out all the routes, they wanted Alehus Harbe. That's what he's saying. It's connection. They wanted Alehus Harbe because Moshe, Shalonu Meretz Mitzrayim, Moshe, who was our tour guide, so he's not here, and nobody knows as much as he does. So they wanted Alehus Harbe. Anyway, I want to conclude with something that was bothering me very much, and it's a general question. We know the Rebbeinu Shalom is a kol yachal. He can do anything. The Rebbeinu Shalom can do anything. But let's say something is impossible. Can he do the impossible? The Rambam says that to say the Rebbeinu Shalom cannot do the impossible is not a deficiency. You're not say it's not a pagi in his covet. For instance, you have a circle. Can the Rebbeinu Shalom make that a circle should have 4 right angles? I would say no, because if he makes 4 right angles, then it's not a circle, it's a square, or it's a rectangle, but it's not a circle. So the Rebbeinu Shalom should make that a circle should have 4 right angles. He can't do that. He can't do something which is intrinsically impossible. Can the Rebbeinu Shalom make that a tall man should only be 6 inches off the ground? I would say no, because if he's 6 inches off the ground, he's not even a short man. He's like a tiny man. So if the definition is, can he make a tall man should be so short? If he made that tall man, he could shorten him. But to say that a tall man is so short, it's not possible, because that's intrinsically, not possible. No, the Kaifrim, always, I don't know if you've heard these questions, but, many of us have heard these questions. They want to say, how could you say, Hashem is Kol Yochel, he can do anything. Can he destroy himself? Chas v'sholom ma'afro p'mayu. Can he do that? Can he make a stone that he can't lift? So the answer to both of these questions is obviously no. So does that mean that there's a limit to his ability? Of course not. These things are intrinsically impossible. So the Rebbe Shalom cannot do something which is intrinsically impossible. So that's I want to establish this, that Rebbe Shalom cannot do something which is intrinsically impossible. Now, when it comes to the Luchas, so it says, Mishnei Evreim Mizem V'Zein Ksuvim, they were written from both sides. That means the Luchas were B'nei them because they went through and through. Every letter went through and through. It wasn't just engraved on the outside, it was engraved all the way through. So the Gemara says that the Mem and the Samach were Amdim B'nes, because once you all around, and then you had the middle, so it was all around in the middle, but there was nowhere for it to hold. Of course, it had to be, if it would, like a gimel standing on the stone, but a Mem and a Samach were cut out all around. So how did it stay suspended in the air? So it's still suspended in the air. It was a nest, very nice nest, possible nest. The thing is standing in the air. Good, but you could. But the Gemara says you could read it both ways. Both ways. That means that it says Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and if you turn the other way, you could also read Anochi Hashem Elokecha. So Rashi says that it means, Rashi in Shabbos, Daf Kuf Dalet says that this means, the Gemara seems to be like that. The Gemara says Nevuv and Buban, which is really in reverse. Rashi says you could read it back, you could read it from the other side, but you would be reading it backwards with backwards letters. Not that you're reading Anochi Hashem Elokecha. But the other side, you're reading, you could read it, but it's not going the same way. Rabbeinu Bechaya says no, that from one side it's written this way, and from the other side you can read it that way. Both sides are right to left. How is such a thing possible? If the first side, the front, let's say, if it was engraved all the way through, that means that there was spaces, and now if you're doing it from the other way, so all the spaces are stepping on each other, and you're having just a chaos, a bilbil over there. How could it wouldn't be the distinct letters? You have a letter, but from the other side, the letter is engraved on top of this letter. So how is it possible to have that you can read from both sides? You can read it this way, and you can read it that way. How is that possible? So this always bothers me. So I once read a little bit about quantum mechanics, and there's something called superposition. So the Gemara says, the Mishnah says in Ovos, that in the Beis Hamikdash there were nisim, was eindem tzvufim umeshachim u'revacha. You were able, when you stood, everybody stood in the Beis Hamikdash, they were very, crowded, but when they bowed down, everybody had a lot of room. How did that happen? Did it mean that everything expanded? Did the Beis Hamikdash expand? And what happened to all the houses outside the Beis Hamikdash? Did they also expand? How does this thing happen? And also, the Gemara says in Meila that the Aron was not Menamida. It says that the Aron was in the Kodesh Kedoshim. There were 10 amas on one side and 10 amas on the other side, and the whole width of the Kodesh Kedoshim was 20 amas. So where was the Aron? The Gemara says the Aron doesn't go into the Cheshbon. So how does that happen? So you could say the Aron is in a different world, but maybe it's Lamalam, it's really in Olam Elyon right here. I don't know, but how's the Aron in that minion? Parshas, the Aron was here in this world. So what I think is the pshat, that you have, let's say, a point in time. A point in time. Two people could occupy the same point in time. At the same time, right now, this moment, you could have I'm here and you're here. We both occupy the same point of time. I think that you could also occupy the same point in space. That just like you could occupy the same point in time, two people can occupy the same point in space. How does this work? So in quantum mechanics, on the micro world, you do have things like that, where electrons can occupy, electrons can occupy, it's called superposition, occupy the same. So if there's such a thing is possible, so in the macro world you don't have it, but the nace could be that you have it in the macro world. So therefore, you would have in the same space, you have the luchas going one way, and in the same space you have luchas going the other way, and they don't step on each other. Just like Ayman Tzvu from Mesachim L'Revacha, doesn't mean that the Beis Hamikdash expanded. The Aron Ein Lamida just means that the Aron was able to occupy the same space of the Ritzpah. In other words, the Ritzpah had nothing on it. That's what it was. It was 20 amas wide, and the Aron was able to stand on that and occupy that same space as the Ritzpah, and without any kind of contradiction. That is superposition, and superposition exists in Teva on the micro level. On the macro level, it really doesn't exist. So the ness was that it existed in the macro level, but it's not an impossibility. So that's the same thing with Ayman Tzvu from Mesachim L'Revacha. Everybody bowed down, and everybody was superimposed on everybody else. In the same space, all the people were able to be superimposed each on the other without interfering with each other. So that's exactly what happened over here. That both sides were superimposed on each other, and they didn't interfere with each other. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.